This is the Travel Insights podcast powered by Battleface. I am your host, Clay Coomer, head of marketing at Battleface. And in today's upcoming episode, we are going to dive into the world of annual travel insurance and some key insights about this policy specific to our US and UK markets. In 2024, it was an explosive year of growth for annual travel insurance policies at Battleface. And we believe that this plan is going to continue to grow into 2025. Tune in as we talk more about the benefits of these plans for the US and UK markets and some key insights along the way to help you sell this plan better in the market. This is episode 2 of the Travel Insights podcast. Welcome, fellow travelers, to the second episode of 2025. Clay Coomer here, head of marketing at Battleface and host of the Travel Insights podcast powered by Battleface. And in today's episode, as you heard in the intro, we're going to be talking about annual travel insurance plans specific to the US and UK markets with some insights from 2024. And while I recognize that it is probably difficult to get excited about travel insurance, I can assure you that this topic is one that is near and dear to my heart because of the growth that we're seeing for this particular product. So just a quick breakdown of what we're going to be covering in today's episode. We're going to do a benefit overview and talk through the benefits that are within annual travel insurance plans for the US and UK markets. Going to cover some insights as well, specific to the US market from 2024. Some things that we saw that stood out to us. There was one thing in particular that I was not prepared for, and it was that the average age of travelers for the U.S. market. Certainly wasn't expecting what I saw. And then we're going to cover some key insights for the UK market as well. And then that's it. We're going to adjourn. So stay tuned for more. We're going to get into first the benefit breakdown here coming up next on our first segment of the Travel Insights podcast. This is Multiple Trips, One Policy. Welcome back to segment 1, where we're going to do a brief benefit breakdown of what types of benefits are in these plans and which benefits are customizable within the policy. So to start out with the US, we refer to this internally, we call it MTA plan, multi-trip annual. That's what you'll see on our website, multi-trip annual. It is a plan that has 365 days of coverage, and it includes benefits that are packaged. So this is not our typical unbundled modular type of plan. This is a pre-packaged plan with comprehensive benefits. So it's a little bit different compared to our single trip discovery policy that we've talked about before, where we can see attachment rates of specific benefits. For this plan in the US, it has first and foremost trip cancellation, and the trip cancellation limit in the US is that one customizable benefit where you can adjust the limit of how much trip cancellation you want for the entire year. And one thing to note is whatever limit you do select, that is an annual limit. So if you select $5,000, you have $5,000 in trip cancellation coverage for the full year. So in the event that you have to cancel one of your trips and it was a $5,000 trip and it was a covered reason, and you get reimbursed, then you've exhausted that benefit for the year. So that's generally how that works for this annual type of policy. It also comes with trip interruption and single occupancy. And single occupancy is kind of I'd say a lesser known type of benefit, but essentially it's when you're traveling with somebody else and they happen to leave for a covered reason. Delay, common benefit that is in the travel protection world. Misconnection, in the event that you miss your connection for a covered reason. There's baggage loss, baggage delay, and then travel medical, which again, travel medical was from a previous episode talked about as our quote unquote benefit of the year, where it definitely had the highest increase in attachment in our single trip plans. Within travel medical, it also has a couple other benefits alongside that, with including emergency dental and also hospital room and board. And then lastly is emergency evacuation, which again has been also a pretty popular benefit that we've been seeing as well. If you go over to one of the travel aggregator sites in the US, Squaremouth, they indicate that a lot of people are in fact customizing or filtering their quotes based off of this emergency evacuation type of benefit at a pretty high clip. So that's the plan in the U.S. Again, comprehensive plan containing a lot of the traditional benefits that you find at a single trip plan. And if you get a quote for this plan, just know that one of the main misconceptions of this plan is that a lot of consumers don't realize that the benefit limits of this plan are in fact annual limits. So please keep that in mind for this particular plan. Next is for the UK. Internally at Battleface, we love acronyms, so we refer to this one as AMT, not MTA in the US, but AMT, which is annual multi-trip. This plan in the UK is, I would say, more known, more common in the UK. It's definitely has more awareness in the UK market, and the plan that we have comes with a pretty robust list of benefits. There's certainly more benefits in this plan in the UK compared to our US plan, and just also too in the world of insurance. If you don't know, there are different carriers all across the world. So there's different carriers that have different underwriting criteria and different limits and different benefits, all these various things. And I'm not an underwriter, I'm not an actuary, but at a very common level, I can understand certain things about this. So like in the US market, for instance, we use US carriers, and those all have to be filed through the Department of Insurance in every state. And in the UK, they have their own separate regulations. And in the UK, we use Lloyd's of London for this plan, which is a very well-known and respected name in the UK and abroad for that matter. So for UK, we have first a maximum trip duration. So consumers have the ability to customize the maximum trip duration. So they can toggle between, I think, 3 different options, depending on the length of trips that they're planning on taking in a given year. I think the lowest is 31 days. So if you're planning on traveling for less than 31 days per trip, then that's the option you should likely go with. Then there's the cancellation, curtailment, misconnection benefit, which has the option. You have the option to choose between, I believe it's £2,000 and £5,000 for an annual limit for that one. Then there's a travel delay, which is similar to trip delay in the US. The baggage loss and delay, I think that one also is customizable, where you can pick between £2,000 and £5,000. So I think those are the two benefits that you can adjust your limits for the year. Then you have emergency medical and additional expenses with also a hospital benefit tacked onto that. The next 3 here, so we have personal accident, personal liability, and personal money and passport. So essentially, if you have an accident, you have some personal accident coverage for a covered reason. If you're found liable for a personal accident where somebody else is injured, there's a benefit for that. And of course, money and passport. So if your passport gets stolen or money gets stolen, there's a benefit that kicks in for that as well. Then there's these last 2 here. We have legal expenses that may occur during the course of a year while you're on your travels. And then hijack and kidnapping is another one on this plan that is, I'd say, unique and different from the US. And there's also optional add-ons as well for the UK plan. So there's an optional add-on for an activities package. So there's three different levels, an activities package, and then there's a winter sports package as well. So those are the optional add-ons. So those are the benefit breakdown for our US and our UK plans. Again, one thing to point out is that these come with annual limits on a per benefit basis. And also, last thing worth noting as well, both the US and the UK, we have partners that have done a custom white label type of experience where they use the APIs and they pull in our APIs into the partner's front end UX and UI experience. So on the surface, it looks like you're buying from the partner. On the back end, it's our policy that is being administrated. We also have affiliate program as well that's active here. So basically a custom affiliate links with partner IDs associated to purchase paths, and working through a couple different partnerships now where we're working on embedding this as well, which is going to be a kind of a new concept for us. But I do expect that these plans to continue their growth into 2025. I know we had a pretty big January just based off what I saw. So definitely a plan that I would suggest that current partners of Battleface look into, as well as new partners that are looking for a different alternative to single trip plan. Look into this annual policy as well. And I do believe that it's also going to be available in Canada this year. It's going to be available in Australia here very soon this quarter. All right, so next we're gonna look into the U.S. market in 2024. We analyzed a year's worth of data to try and understand some insights from this policy in 2024 to help us make more informed decisions about this going forward this year and years to come. So stay tuned. Coming up next, some key insights in the U.S. market for annual travel insurance in 2024. Welcome back. This is the Travel Insights podcast powered by Battleface. Clay Coomer here, host of this podcast. And now we're going to get into some key insights for our U.S. market for annual travel insurance. And we're going to start first with just a couple of data points here that I found interesting. First is the average number of insureds per order. So essentially, when you have one order, you can have several policies on one order. So the word policy is kind of interchangeable with insureds, and order thing was just one order, where you can have multiple insureds on that particular order. So the average number of policies per order, or also known as the average number of insureds per order, was at 1.43 in 2024. So the majority of these transactions were one traveler, one insured per order, just based off of that stat of 1.43. Obviously, there were scenarios where there were more, where there were 2 travelers, 3 travelers, 4. But again, the highest concentration of policies were just the one primary insured per policy, just based on that 1.43 number. Next, looking at the average premium paid per insured. So when we look at this, a lot of times in this industry, we refer to it as average order value, but in this case, we're going to be looking at it as the average premium paid per insured. So not to get those confused. So that was a pretty broad range. So the range was as low as $210 per insured up to $624 per insured. So again, pretty broad range there. I do believe that when we look at it across all policies, it ended up around $400 per insured. And we'll get into the reason behind that here in just a couple minutes as to why that number seems higher than usual. Getting into the next stat here in terms of our most selected trip cost limits. So this goes back to the customization of the trip cancellation benefit, where you can pick and choose how much trip costs you want to insure for the year. So the range goes from 0 all the way as high as 30,000, depending on our partners. So some of our partners have options as low as 0 for Battleface in particular. I don't think we display an option over 10,000, for example, on our direct-to-consumer site. But when we look at the top 3 most selected, and again, this is looking at not just direct-to-consumer, but also all of our partners in the U.S. that sold this plan, the number 1 most selected was 2,500. That came in at just over 30% of insured. So 2,500 for the year. The second was 10,000, so a $10,000 limit. I believe that was just under 28%, so a close second. And the third was $5,000 for an annual trip cost limit for that trip cancellation benefit. So this is the top 3. Again, there is a range, and it depends on where you buy the plan from. Next stat. So looking at the average number of days to first trip departure. So somebody, for example, buys a policy today, right? So the date of this recording is February 2nd, 2025. So you buy the policy today. What's the average number of days until that first trip departure? So in our case, in the U.S. market, it was about 23 days. So essentially, there's 23 days of lead time from when that policy was purchased to when that first trip begins. And that's important to note, just because that is a pretty short time frame, right? And it's short by comparison to our single trip policies in the U.S. So for single trip plans in the U.S., when we looked at that data, I believe I think it was the last podcast, the major shifts 2024, the average there was about 90 to 100 days of lead time, essentially. So somebody who's buying a plan on January 1st, but they're not traveling until April 1st, right? So in this case, we only had 23 days in between that purchase and that first trip that was set to start. And the last 4 key insights here that we'll get into, which these were probably the most interesting to me. So the first one is the top 3 states of residence where these insureds lived. So the top 3 were California, Florida, and Texas. So this is probably not going to come as much of a surprise to those in the industry that know this. Obviously, those 3 are very heavily populated, very populated states, but also too, they are states where you probably find people who would have a proclivity to travel more in a given year. So California, Florida, Texas. California far and away was the number 1 state by, I think, 27% of insureds lived in California. And then the next one here, which again was probably the most interesting stat, as I mentioned earlier, 80% of insureds in 2024 were 45 years old or older, with 35% between the ages of 65 and 74. So 35% of insureds last year were between 65 and 74. So this is a very different stat compared to what we're used to at Battleface. So at Battleface, when we look at our single trip plans, we typically see that our average age is around 36, 37 years old. But when it comes to annual travel insurance in the U.S., at least in 2024, it was a much higher age. I think it was around 60 years old was the average. And we looked at all insureds, with 35% being between 65 and 74. So you're looking at that baby boomers and older, like even getting into the silent generation here. So, and when you couple that with the top 3 states, what you can kind of deduce from that is likely people who are retired or near retirement and living in warmer climates in the U.S. who likely have more disposable income to travel. So those are probably the 2 key demographics there when looking at the customer profile of who's has the highest likelihood of buying this plan. So next, looking at our destinations. So top 3 destination countries outside the U.S. were Italy and the U.K. and Mexico. So a little blend there between EU and North America and UK. So looking at the coverage areas, because for this plan too, if we kind of zoom out a little bit and look at it from a coverage area perspective, we had 67% of insureds that indicated that they're only traveling to international destinations. So they did not put the U.S. as a country that they wanted insured. So it was international only, 7%. Next would be U.S. and international. So people who indicated that they're going to take domestic trips and international trips. So that came in at 23% of insureds. And then the last one here is domestic only. So people who indicated that they're only seeking protection in the United States. And that was just over 9%. So that kind of rounds out our main key insights for the U.S. market in 2024. Again, I'd say just the biggest key takeaway there is that 35% of insureds were between 65 and 74, with the top 3 states being California, Florida, and Texas. So again, looking at warmer climates and older in age, likely retired, more disposable income, have the ability to travel a lot more. So those are our key insights for the U.S. market. So next, we're going to pivot to the U.K., look at some key insights there for 2024. Stay tuned. Coming up next, going to talk about the UK market. Welcome back. Travel Insights Podcast powered by Battleface. This is the second episode of 2025. Multiple trips, one policy. Thanks for sticking with us here. And now we're going to focus our attention on the UK market for annual travel insurance and some key insights that we found from our data in 2024. The average number of insureds per order, which we covered in the U.S. Again, so this number was 1.27, which was less than the U.S. U.S. was 1.43. So again, more one person per policy type of purchases in 2024 in the UK market, coming at 1.27. The average age of insureds in the UK was at 39. So coming in, again, about where we typically see things in Battleface in general, where, again, the highest percentage of purchases we see from insureds is around that 30 to 39 age range. And this is staying true for the UK for annual travel protection at 39 years old. So next is a stat that is, I'd say, vastly different compared to the U.S., which is the average premium per insured. And in British pounds, that range, the average range was £79 to £136. So again, very, very different when we think about how that translates to the U.S. market. Then even when you factor in the conversion rate, it's still not even close. I believe that the average premium per insured, when we look at it through all insureds in 2024, is about £109 for an annual policy. So again, pretty significant variance there when we look at it compared to the U.S. market. But again, different carriers, different types of plans, different pricing, different limits, all those types of things, come into play there. And of course, the average age is much lower, and a large factor in terms of pricing is age. So one thing to keep in mind there. And then another stat that varied pretty drastically compared to the U.S. as well is the average days to first trip departure. So in the UK, that was only an average of 7 days. So people who in the UK who were buying this policy were buying the policy, and then 7 days later, they were taking their first trip. So in the US, that was 23 days. And again, I think this is likely because in the UK market, I think there's more exposure to annual plans. So at the time of purchase, I think UK travelers, they usually get the choice between single trip and annual on a more frequent basis. So when you see the annual purchases coming in for the UK, and you're only seeing a 7-day first trip, this is a last minute type of purchase, right? Before they go on that first trip, and they're likely going to take subsequent trips after the fact. So getting into our last 4 key insights here in the UK market. So in terms of where insureds lived in the UK, the highest concentration of insureds lived in London. So residents of London. So about 25% of insureds indicated they live in London, with the other 75%, obviously, coming from places outside of London, in Great Britain or Northern Ireland or Wales or Scotland, right? That make up the United Kingdom. Next, looking at coverage areas. So coverage areas is a little bit different in the UK. So in the UK, in that market, we don't ask for which country you're traveling to specifically. Instead, we have 3 coverage areas. So the three coverage areas that are offered are worldwide, including North America, worldwide excluding North America, so Caribbean, United States, Canada, right? And then there's Europe only. So there is an option where UK travelers are only indicate they're only going to Europe. So this was a pretty even split too, by the way, right? So worldwide, including North America, came in at number 1 at 37% of insureds. Number 2 was worldwide, excluding North America, and that was at 32% of insureds. And Europe only came in at just over 30%. So again, pretty even split there in terms of the percent of total insureds. And then getting back to that age topic as well. So 70% of insureds in 2024 were between the ages of 19 and 54, with the 25 to 34-year-old age range accounting for 25% of the total. So younger demographic of travelers in the UK that were buying this plan compared to the U.S. market. And again, that average age for all insureds was at 39. And our last key insight here is for the UK market is looking at just a high-level view of seasonality trends, which I think that this data that we have, again, is 2024. I think this may be a little too early to tell, but looking at the percentage of purchases by month, August came in at the highest percent of purchases. So August was the number 1 month in terms of transactions that occurred, followed by May and December. So I'm not really sure what to make of that right now. I'm really curious to get more data on that topic, especially as we keep going into 2025. So I think this is certainly subject to change, but yeah, the highest month from a transaction perspective in the UK market was the month of August. I think as we start seeing renewals come in, I think that could change when you think about when it comes time to renew the policy. I would suspect December may creep up to be a more popular month as people are starting to book trips for 2025, and they're thinking about having an annual plan for the year, and they want to start as early as January to have it for a full year of coverage. To me, that makes sense. So, all right, so that is our key insights for the UK market. Coming up next, we're going to recap some of the key highlights that we heard from this podcast, and then we will wrap things up, and you will be on your way. We will be back in just a couple seconds. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and to put a bow on episode 2 of 2025, Multiple Trips, One Policy, a deep dive into annual travel protection in the US and UK markets. We covered a benefit breakdown of the benefits that are within a US policy and also the benefits in a UK policy. And again, in that US plan, that is a bundled plan. So typically we sell modular. This is a bundled plan with prepackaged benefits, and only one of them is customizable. It's a trip cancellation benefit. In our UK market, there's more benefits within that plan, and there, I believe, are 3 that are customizable. You can customize the trip duration limit, the trip cancellation limit, and the travel baggage limit in the UK market. And it comes with 2 additional add-ons with activities coverage and winter sports coverage. And for the US market, again, just the biggest key takeaway there for the US market was the average age of insured, where we saw over a third of insureds were between that age of 65 and 74, so older in age, likely in retirement, living in warmer climates, the top 3 states being California, Texas, and Florida. So again, talking specifically about that cohort of travelers who, again, are likely taking multiple trips in a given year, and just given the destination stats, traveling internationally, particularly to countries in Europe. And for the UK, I think the biggest takeaway there was that it was a lower premium per insured, especially compared to the US in particular. But the average premium per insured in the UK market came in at £109 per insured for an annual policy with all those benefits. Average age of insured in the UK was 39 years old, so skewed a bit lower compared to our US markets. And the number one selected coverage area was worldwide, including North America at 37% of purchases. So those are your key takeaways for UK. So that is our recap, and that is our episode, Multiple Trips, One Policy, episode 2 of 2025 on the Travel Insights podcast, powered by Battleface. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you were able to learn something. Reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd love to talk to you. I am Clay Coomer, signing off. We'll see you again next time on the Travel Insights podcast, powered by Battleface. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 2 of the Travel Insights podcast, powered by Battleface. This has been Multiple Trips, One Policy, a deep dive on annual travel insurance plans in the US and UK market. Do not forget to follow or subscribe to the Travel Insights podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. The source of this data is proprietary and anonymized from the Battleface and UK annual multi-trip policy data as reported from the internal Battleface Policy Administration System. This podcast was written, edited, recorded, and hosted by me, Clay Coomer. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you again next time on the Travel Insights podcast, powered by Battleface.